Why all of a sudden is the WWE president doing multiple interviews? What's the point of that? What is the point you're trying to get across with that?
Well, I'm just a small town bird lawyer, and I don't know nothing about birthing these big business deals and such, but I know a little bit about wrestling, and it's not like Hollywood in that you cannot let all of these major names in their own way, whether they're active or like a Bray Wyatt, or whether they're legends like Ric Flair or whatever. The list that we talked about on the Drive-Thru, the clip is up now, I'm sure, on YouTube by this point. You can't let all these guys go at the same time, coming on the heels of CM Punk and Bryan Danielson. And it's not like Hollywood in that, yeah, there's a million box office attractions and as far as actors and or directors that you can attach a name to, etc. No, these are people. Do you think the Hollywood guy doesn't understand that these are individual people that, regardless whether they own their gimmick name or not, the fans accept them as individual people that cannot be replicated? You can't just get another actor to play the part in the franchise. It doesn't work that way. And they're handing, they haven't had, the WWE has not had this level of financial opposition since Turner Broadcasting was into it as far as they got in the late 90s. But at the same time, the opposition that the WWE had in the 90s was more credible in the ring and more credible in terms of a balanced talent roster to begin with, even before they really started stealing the Halls and Nashes. This program, AEW, started out as an indie-rific wet dream, and in the past 2 years, they have turned over to them what now? I didn't count the list, but they've at least a dozen fairly major level names, and most of those have come in the last several months. So now all of us, they're handing these people over to the guy with a lot of money when his clear, glaring weaknesses as competition to the WWE were he doesn't have major players and he doesn't know how to book. Well, now they've cleared up the major player situation the WWE has for them by letting them have a bunch. He still don't know how to book, but now he's got the money, he's got the TV, and he's got the names. So what the fuck is Nick Khan doing here? Because now we can't even say as a Vince didn't used to just say, oh, I got a guy on a fucking mega contract and I've been using him in main events, but I'll let him go ahead and release him. We're worried about the budget. No, he'd take the fucking water coolers off the 4th floor and he'd cut all the fucking wrestling staff's salary by 40%, but he never ran his top guys off. The only one he ever, Jerry Jarrett used to claim poverty all the time. He was just a poor Southern wrestling promoter. He'd claim budget with everybody. But Vince, has he actually only ever said to one person, was it Bret Hart? The only one I just can't pay you. Go away. I'll help you go to the other place. Has he ever assisted anyone, especially for budgetary reasons, in going to competition?
Other than Bret, I can't remember any other instance, no.
So I'm seeing a lot of this Nick Khan. Maybe Nick Khan's, the one that painted the new NXT logo. You think?
If you have a band and you manage them, do you treat the members like they're the Beatles, or do you treat them like they're Menudo? Just replaceable widgets. Just throw someone else in there. That's the new person. He doesn't know anything about wrestling. He's a talented agent. He knows how to make a deal. He knows nothing about wrestling except what the WWE's wrestling people have put in his head.
And then, if history is any account, may have discounted some of that because they're wrestling people. And business people don't like to listen to wrestling people, historically.
He may truly believe in the WWE star system and Vince's magic touch, just creating stars and this amazing company. You always hear these outsiders. This amazing company, they churn out all this amazing content and they have all these stars. Yeah, it's just no one cheers for any of them. and no one gives a fuck. And you're chasing them off, and you're giving them less and less reason to stay. Let's continue on this topic because the next series of quotes I have here, once again, courtesy the transcription of PW Insider Elite. This is about the talent cuts. So this ties into what we're talking about here. Here is Nick Khan on being blamed for WWE cuts over the last year. Quote, "There's a collective of us. And keep in mind, at WWE, as you know, there's one boss. That's Vince. As we all know." So he said that twice there. Hold on. And keep in mind, at WWE, as you know, there's one boss. That's Vince. As we all know. All right.
I'm glad we know that.
I'm glad we know that. So between Bruce Pritchard, who oversees the entire creative process.
Oh, brother.
Between Kevin Dunn, who oversees our production. Between Stephanie McMahon, Paul Levesque, all are involved in these decisions, with ultimately Vince making the final decision on everything. And the second quote referring to why there have been so many releases. Here it is. "I don't know that there's one explanation for it. I think ultimately what's looked at is this person for us going to move the needle now or in the imminent future? By the way, we had a 2-day tryout in Las Vegas, which ended yesterday, which Triple H and Johnny Laurinaitis and Bruce Pritchard were all at, as were the rest of us. We've signed over a dozen new talent coming out of that tryout, and I'm not suggesting that's why we cut the other talent, but we're always looking for what's next. We live in the present. We live in the future. You pick one. We live in the present. We live in the future. We don't live in the past. So when people leave, they move on with their life and their careers. That's good by us. For us, it's what works for us and our product at the moment in time. And again, what's going to work down the road. And largely in part, the existing roster is based on that."
Well, that was a word salad.
He says nothing in the most glorious way.
There's a lot of words there. Look here. Am I under the mistaken assumption that they've said they're not going to sign any more independent wrestlers, or is that what they've said? And that this tryout was primarily non-wrestlers that want to be wrestlers. That's what I've heard. Is that the case?
I'm not sure if it's an official edict, but I've heard the same thing. The word is don't look for indie wrestlers, look for wrestlers we can mold into the WWE way.
Well, point is, especially with the NXT track record of keeping the best workers the longest and sending the least accomplished to the main roster the quickest, if they just signed these guys from this tryout camp last week or whenever this interview took place, they're going to be 2 years, especially if they've got to train them from scratch. So that doesn't explain, let's just drop Bray Wyatt and Flair's not happy because we pissed him off because of his daughter's creative. His son-in-law's over there. Let's let him go too, because then Charlotte will want to go. We'll just get rid of our best female when her contract is up and she's available. Cole, we don't know what the fuck's going on there. Bray Wyatt that they burned alive, that's their fault, not his. Danielson, all these guys, and he's crowing that they just signed some walk-ons at their tryout camp last week.